For thousands of years across West Africa, a tree grew that healers called the tree of life, not as a figure of speech, as a literal description of what their communities believed it could do. Every part of it was used. The leaves for nutrition and healing, the seeds for water purification, the bark for inflammation, the roots for digestive support. It traveled with the people who knew it, carried in memory, in practice, in the recipes passed from grandmother to daughter across generations and across oceans during one of history's most painful chapters. And then it was dismissed, called primitive, called superstition. Replaced, in many communities, by pharmaceutical alternatives that were marketed as modern and scientific. While the tree of life sat quietly in courtyards and roadsides, doing exactly what it had always done, simply no longer trusted. Today, modern science is catching up to what those healers always knew. The plant is Moringa. And the body of peer-reviewed research, now confirming what generations of African healers documented through careful, patient observation, is some of the most compelling evidence for any natural compound studied in the last 20 years. I'm going to show you what the research actually says. I'm going to show you why this matters specifically for your body after 55. And I am going to show you exactly how to use it. Stay with me. Because what was nearly erased deserves to be remembered properly, not exaggerated, not mythologized, but understood for exactly what the evidence shows it to be. Let me tell you the history honestly, because this story does not need exaggeration. The truth is powerful enough on its own. Moringa oleifera originated in the foothills of the Himalayas, but spread across South Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean centuries ago through trade and through the movement of people. In West Africa specifically, it became deeply integrated into traditional medicine and daily nutrition. Communities used moringa leaves as a primary food source during dry seasons when other vegetables were scarce. They used it to support new mothers after childbirth. They used it for inflammation, for wound healing, for general vitality in elders. This was not folklore practiced without observation. This was generations of careful, repeated use, refined through trial and outcome. The way all traditional medicine systems developed their knowledge before modern clinical trials existed to formalize it. Researchers who study the history of African medicine have documented clearly what happened next. During the colonial era, Western medicine was introduced and positioned as superior, more scientific, more modern, while indigenous healing traditions were frequently disparaged as primitive or unscientific. African healers were excluded from the medical education systems and research institutions that colonial powers established. The knowledge systems were marginalized, not because they lacked merit, but because the political and cultural structures of the time devalued them. This is documented in academic research on the history of African ethnomedicine. It is not an exaggeration. It is a historical record, and the practical result was that for decades, plants like moringa continued to be used faithfully by the communities who always knew them, while largely existing outside the formal scientific literature that would have validated and refined that knowledge for the wider world. That gap is finally closing. I want to be precise here, because this plant does not need inflated claims. The real research is impressive enough. Moringa leaves contain an extraordinarily dense concentration of nutrients. Gram for gram, dried moringa leaf powder contains significantly more vitamin C than oranges, more calcium than milk, more potassium than bananas, and more protein than most other leafy vegetables studied. But the research that matters most for adults over 55 centers on 3 specific areas. Inflammation. Moringa contains a class of compounds called isothiocyanates, along with quercetin and chlorogenic acid, polyphenols with documented anti-inflammatory activity. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have measured significant reductions in inflammatory markers in subjects consuming moringa leaf extract, with effects researchers have compared in some respects to standard anti-inflammatory compounds, though without the same gastrointestinal risks associated with long-term pharmaceutical use. Blood sugar regulation. Several controlled studies have found that moringa leaf powder, taken consistently, produces measurable reductions in fasting blood glucose and improved insulin sensitivity in adults with elevated blood sugar. This matters enormously after 55, when insulin resistance becomes significantly more common and contributes to the inflammatory burden we have discussed in previous videos on this channel. Oxidative stress and cellular aging. This is where anti-aging research specifically lives. Moringa is exceptionally rich in antioxidant compounds that neutralize the free radical damage which accumulates in tissue over decades and accelerates visible and cellular aging. Laboratory studies on moringa extract have demonstrated meaningful antioxidant and free radical scavenging activity comparable to other well-established anti-aging plant compounds studied in similar research. I want to be honest with you about the current state of this research. Much of the strongest evidence comes from laboratory and animal studies, with a growing but still developing body of human clinical trials. This is true of many traditional remedies that are only now receiving the research investment they were denied for decades. That does not make the existing evidence meaningless. It means the evidence base is still being built, by researchers finally giving this knowledge the scientific attention it was denied for generations. Everything I have just described becomes more relevant the longer you have been alive. Chronic low-grade inflammation increases with age. Insulin sensitivity declines with age. Oxidative stress accumulates with age. These are the same processes we have discussed across this channel. The same mechanisms underlying joint pain, fatigue, cognitive fog, and the chronic conditions that millions of adults over 55 are told to simply manage. A nutrient-dense plant that addresses inflammation, blood sugar regulation, and oxidative stress simultaneously is not a cure for any single condition. It is foundational support for the biological systems that, when neglected, produce the conditions we have spent this entire channel discussing. Moringa is one example of something I have spent considerable time documenting. Remedies with real historical use and real, if still developing, scientific support that modern medicine has been slow to investigate, slow to fund, and slow to take seriously. In my book, The 50 Forgotten Remedies the Modern World Wants You to Ignore, I have gathered 50 of these plants, foods, and practices with genuine traditional use and genuine research behind them, presented honestly, without exaggeration. The link is in the description below. Pay what it is worth to you. Now, here is exactly how to use moringa correctly. Moringa is most commonly available as dried leaf powder, capsules, or fresh leaves where available. *** dried leaf powder is the most studied and most versatile form. 1 to 2 teaspoons daily, stirred into water, smoothies, soups, or stews. The flavor is mild and slightly earthy, easy to incorporate into food you already eat. Capsules are a convenient alternative if the taste or texture of the powder is unappealing. Look for products that list Moringa oleifera leaf as the only ingredient with no fillers, and that specify the standardized leaf content. Fresh leaves, where accessible, particularly for those with Caribbean or West African community connections, where moringa may be grown locally or available at specialty markets, can be cooked the traditional way, similar to how spinach or other leafy greens are prepared, ideally with a small amount of healthy fat to support absorption of the fat-soluble nutrients it contains. A few important notes. Start with a smaller amount and increase gradually, as some people experience mild digestive adjustment when first introducing moringa. If you are on blood sugar medication or blood pressure medication, Speak with your doctor before adding moringa consistently, because its effects on both can be significant enough to require dose adjustments under medical supervision. Consistency matters more than quantity. The research showing benefits involved regular daily use over weeks to months, not occasional consumption. I want to close this section with something important. Moringa has, in recent years, become a popular ingredient in expensive Western wellness products, sold in elegant packaging, often at prices far beyond what it costs in the communities where it has been used for generations. There is something worth sitting within that. The same plant that was once dismissed as primitive is now sold back, repackaged at a premium, to the very communities, and to others who never stopped valuing it. You do not need the expensive version. A simple bag of dried moringa leaf powder, sourced from a reputable supplier, gives you the same active compounds the research has studied. Using it is not just a wellness choice. It is, in a quiet way, an act of reclaiming something that was nearly taken from the people who knew it best. If someone in your life grew up with moringa in their grandmother's garden, or remembers it from childhood, send them this video today. There is a particular kind of validation in learning that something dismissed for so long is now being studied seriously by researchers who are finally paying attention. Give this video a like. Subscribe to the Hidden Truths Life, because some of the most valuable knowledge in the world was never lost. It was simply waiting to be taken seriously again. The end.